I see you in that empty room where even the walls seem to echo your thoughts back to you. The chair where someone once sat remains untouched, as if preserving the memory of their presence. You reach for your phone, hoping to find a message, a sign that you have not been forgotten by the world. The silence becomes a weight, pressing against your chest. You wonder if this loneliness will ever pass, if the people who once surrounded you will remember your name again. I know this desert of the heart, my friend. I have walked it too. I know that when doors close and voices fade, the first instinct is to run from the silence. But today, I bring you a truth that once saved me when I too felt abandoned by those I loved. The night I lost Shams of Tabriz, my beloved friend and spiritual companion, I felt as if my soul had been torn from my body. I searched for him in every corner of Konya, in every passing face, in every whisper of the wind. The pain of his absence was a knife that cut deeper with each breath. I would sit alone in my chamber, the emptiness around me mirroring the void within. I questioned God. I questioned myself. Why had this person who brought such light into my life disappeared? Was I destined to remain in this shadow of loneliness forever? It was during one such night of lamentation that I learned something that transformed my vision of what it means to be alone. As I sat on my prayer rug, tears streaming down my face, I felt a presence in the room, not Shams, not any human presence, but something more profound. In the complete silence of that moment, I realized I was not alone at all. God was closer to me than my own breath, than my own heartbeat. The silence I had been fighting against was not empty at all. It was filled with divine presence. You see, we often mistake aloneness for abandonment. We believe that when others leave us, we are left with nothing. But this is the great illusion. In truth, solitude is not the absence of love, it is love's deepest classroom. The silent spaces between heartbeats are where God whispers the secrets of the universe. When the noise of other voices fades, we can finally hear the voice that has been calling us from within. I remember walking alone in the gardens of Konya after this realization. The morning dew glistened on leaves like tears that had finally found their purpose. The air carried the scent of roses, and for the first time, I breathed it in without wanting anything more. I felt complete in my incompleteness, whole in my woundedness. The birds sang not to fill the silence, but to complement it. I understood then that true companionship begins not with another person, but with making peace with your own presence. My dear friend who feels abandoned today, try this. Sit in your solitude for just 5 minutes. Place your hand on your heart. Feel its steady rhythm beneath your palm. Breathe slowly and say to yourself, I am here. God is here. This moment is complete as it is. This simple practice opened the door to a new way of being for me. The emptiness became fullness. The abandonment became invitation. Consider this truth that contradicts what the world has taught you. Solitude is not your enemy, but your most faithful teacher. The world says that to be alone is to be lacking. But I tell you, to be alone with awareness is to discover the universe within you. The very space that feels empty is actually pregnant with possibility. Your aloneness is not a punishment, it is preparation for a deeper encounter with love itself. There is a reason why seeds must be buried in dark, solitary earth before they can sprout toward the sun. There is wisdom in the chrysalis where the caterpillar dissolves in private before emerging as something entirely new. You too are undergoing a sacred transformation in this solitude. The very people who disappeared from your life have unknowingly created the space where your true self can finally emerge. I learned through my own journey that the friends who leave are sometimes sent by God to push us toward a more essential friendship with ourselves and with the divine. When Shams disappeared, I thought I had lost everything. Instead, I found that his greatest gift was not his presence, but what remained when he was gone, the awakened heart that could now recognize love in all its forms. This path is not easy. There were days when I would still call Sham's name, hoping to hear his voice respond from around some corner. The mind creates ghosts to fill the spaces left by those we miss. But gradually, I learned to welcome the silence itself as my companion. I would sit in the corner of my room and listen to the sound of my own breathing, finding comfort in its constant rhythm. I began to write poems not to be read by others, but as conversations with the divine presence that never leaves. Try this small practice. When you feel most alone, light a single candle. Watch how its flame stands tall and unwavering in perfect solitude. See how it illuminates everything around it precisely because it is alone. Be like that flame. Your aloneness is not your weakness, it is your most radiant strength. From this solitude, you will eventually light the way for others who walk in darkness. The wound of abandonment can become the opening through which God's light enters your life. As the Persian saying goes, the crack is where the light enters you. Each person who left you has unknowingly created another opening for divine love to pour in. Instead of seeing these absences as losses, recognize them as holy invitations to a deeper presence. I composed these words during my solitude. The emptiness that frightens you is the space where God waits to be discovered. What seems like abandonment is actually the clearing of a path. What feels like loss is the beginning of finding. This is the paradox that solitude teaches us if we have the courage to remain present with it. Remember this always. You can be physically alone without being spiritually abandoned. The connection to the divine never breaks, even when all other connections seem to dissolve. In your most solitary moments, God's presence is as constant as the air around you, unseen but essential, unfelt but life-sustaining. This understanding became the foundation that supported me through years of apparent separation from those I loved. Let your aloneness become a sacred vessel rather than an empty cup. Fill it with prayer, with breath, with awareness. The discipline of the heart begins with befriending the silence that frightens you. Make your solitude deliberate, transforming it from something that happens to you into something you cultivate with purpose. This is the path to inner strength and divine companionship. When grief arrives, it comes not as a gentle visitor, but as one who claims your entire home. I have felt this weight that you now carry, this invisible burden that makes even the simplest acts feel like mountains to climb. The emptiness left by someone who will never return. The hollow sound of your footsteps in rooms that once echoed with shared laughter. The bed that feels too large. The table with the chair that no one will sit in again. Every object in your home has become a monument to absence, every routine a painful reminder of what was and what will never be again. I know you carry this loss silently, perhaps feeling that others have moved on while you remain frozen in the amber of your grief. You smile when needed. You perform the necessary tasks of living, but inside the wound remains fresh. Some mornings you wake, and for a blessed moment you forget, only to remember and feel the pain anew, as sharp as the first day. I understand this cycle of remembering and forgetting, this pendulum of pain that swings through your days. I want to ask you a question, and I ask you to be honest with me and yourself. Do you believe there is life after this loss, that your heart can beat with purpose again? If this touches something real inside you, if you recognize this struggle between despair and hope, write in the comments, I am ready to rise from these ashes. When you share this, you are not just freeing yourself, you are lighting a candle for someone still walking in darkness. Your courage to speak truth may be exactly what another soul needs to hear today. During the darkest period of my life, after the disappearance of my beloved Shams, I wandered the streets of Damascus searching for him, calling his name until my voice was nothing but a whisper. My grief was so vast that I could not imagine containing it within my human form. It spilled out of me in tears, in poems, in movements that would later become the sacred turning of the dervishes. I felt as if I had been thrown into an ocean of sorrow without knowing how to swim. One night, as I sat in prayer, my forehead pressed against the cool stone floor, I heard not with my ears but with my heart a truth that would forever change my relationship with loss. The voice said, "What you seek outside has never left your inner chamber. What you mourn as absent is present in a form you have not yet recognized. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing that love does not die when its outer form changes. It simply transforms like water, shifting from ice to liquid to vapor, never truly disappearing. This is the spiritual truth that contradicts common understanding. Loss is not the end of connection, but the beginning of a deeper one. Death and separation do not destroy love. They purify it of all that is not essential. The physical presence may be gone, but the essence of your connection remains, accessible in a new and more profound dimension of your heart. I began to understand that grief is not something to escape, but a sacred passage to walk through with awareness. Each tear I shed was not taking me further from my beloved, but washing away the illusion that love depends on physical presence. I learned to visit Shams not by traveling to distant cities, but by turning inward, by listening to the silence where his wisdom continued to speak to me. Try this practice that sustained me. Each morning, light a candle for the one you have lost. Sit before it and breathe slowly. As you exhale, imagine that your breath carries a message to them. As you inhale, receive whatever comes with openness. Speak one memory aloud, one thing you are grateful for about this person. Then sit in silence for 3 minutes, allowing yourself to feel whatever arises without judgment. This simple ritual creates a bridge between worlds. God remains with you in this valley of shadows. The divine presence is especially close to the brokenhearted, catching each tear in an invisible vessel, transforming your sorrow into something sacred. Your pain is not punishment, but a testament to the depth of your love. The greater the love, the deeper the grief. This equation is not cruel but honest, honoring the magnitude of your connection. I remember walking along the banks of a river during my time of mourning. The water flowed continuously, yet the river remained. This taught me something about the nature of life and death. Those we love are like the water, changing form but never truly disappearing from the great river of existence. Their influence continues to shape the banks of our lives, carving channels of wisdom and compassion that remain long after they have flowed onward. What I discovered through my loss, and what I offer to you now, is that grief can become a doorway rather than a prison. When we stop fighting against the reality of our loss and instead bring our full presence to it, something miraculous happens. The very wound that we thought would destroy us becomes an opening to a more authentic life. I began to see beauty again, not despite my grief, but through it, as if sorrow had cleared my vision to recognize the preciousness of each moment. In my deepest pain, I wrote, "Every loss reveals what remains. Every absence teaches presence. Every ending whispers of beginnings yet unborn." These are not merely comforting words, but truths I lived into, breath by breath, day by day, as I learned to carry both my joy and my sorrow as sacred gifts rather than opposing forces. Let me offer you this practice that transformed my relationship with loss. Each evening, write on a small piece of paper one quality or gift that came to you through the one who is gone. It might be patience, courage, laughter, or simply the capacity to love deeply. Place this paper in a special box or jar. Over time, you will create a treasure of remembrance, a testament not only to what you have lost, but to what can never be taken from you. The virtues and lessons your loved one helped cultivate in your soul are their eternal gifts to you. Turning grief into gratitude is not a betrayal of your loss, but the fulfillment of love's purpose. Every relationship plants seeds in the soil of our hearts. When the physical presence ends, our task becomes tending to those seeds, allowing them to blossom into qualities that honor our loved ones by embodying the best of what they awakened in us. I promise you this: the day will come when you can speak their name without your voice breaking, when memories bring more smiles than tears. This is not because your love has diminished, but because it has matured into something that can hold both the joy of what was and the pain of what is no more. This integration is the most beautiful form of remembrance. The final wisdom I learned about loss is this: we honor our departed not by freezing time at the moment of separation, but by allowing their love to propel us forward into life. To remain forever caught in grief is to keep only half the promise of love. The other half calls us back to living fully, to laughing genuinely, to opening our hearts again to all that this precious life offers, carrying our loved ones with us, not as weights that hold us back, but as lights that guide our way. I know the prison you inhabit, though its walls are invisible to others. I have seen that look in your eyes, the shame that follows surrender, the promises made at dawn broken by dusk, the silent battle that leaves you exhausted yet still captive. The chains of addiction wrap around the spirit like ivy around a tree, slowly constricting until breath itself becomes a struggle. You wonder if freedom is even possible anymore, if you are destined to remain enslaved to this master that promises relief but delivers only deeper bondage. I too have known captivity, not to substances perhaps, but to desires that consumed me, to patterns that repeated endlessly despite my intentions, to the false self that demanded satisfaction at any cost. There was a time when I was enslaved to the approval of others, when my scholarly reputation meant more to me than the truth in my heart. I wore the heavy robes of respectability while my soul suffocated beneath them. Each day was a performance that left me hollow, yet I could not stop the endless striving to be what others expected of me. It was Shams who first showed me the nature of my prison. Walking through the marketplace of Kanya, he took my prized books, the scrolls I had studied for years, and threw them into a fountain. As I watched the ink dissolve into the water, my initial rage gave way to a strange lightness. What I thought was essential to my identity was revealed as another form of attachment, another chain I had mistaken for protection. The first step toward freedom is a paradox that the world will not understand. True liberation begins not with resistance, but with surrender. Not surrender to the addiction that chains you, but surrender of the illusion that you can defeat it through willpower alone. I spent years trying to perfect myself through discipline and knowledge, only to discover that my very striving was another form of bondage. It was only when I fell to my knees in complete exhaustion, admitting my absolute helplessness, that the first key to my cell was revealed. God lives not in our perfection, but in our acknowledgement of brokenness. This is the spiritual truth that contradicts what the world teaches. Your weakness, fully embraced, becomes the foundation of a strength that cannot be shaken. Your admission of powerlessness opens the door to a power greater than any you could generate through your own efforts. I discovered this when I finally stopped trying to be the perfect scholar, the perfect teacher, the perfect devotee, and simply became a hollow reed through which divine music could flow. If these words are touching something deep in you, if you feel this conversation is for your soul, subscribe to this channel. Here, I share teachings for those seeking truth, transformation, and the awakening of the heart. Activate the bell so my words continue reaching you. The path out of addiction is not a straight line, but a spiral. There will be moments when you seem to return to the same place, and in your despair, you may believe nothing has changed. But look closer. Each time you return, you do so with new awareness, new tools, new strength. The circle is actually a spiral leading upward, even when it appears you are moving in circles. I remember days when I would fall back into old patterns of thinking, old fears, old attachments. In those moments, I would hear the voice of Shams, even in falling, you are moving. Even in failing, you are learning. The only true failure is to stop rising after the fall. Try this practice that saved me during my darkest times. Each morning before the demands of the day press upon you, sit in silence for 5 minutes. Place your hands open on your lap, symbolizing both your emptiness and your readiness to receive. Breathe deeply, and with each exhale, release one thing you cannot control. With each inhale, receive the strength for this day only. Do not worry about forever. Do not worry about tomorrow. Simply say, "For this one day, I surrender my struggle to God. For this 1 hour, I choose freedom." This practice of present moment surrender dismantles the overwhelming mountain of addiction into manageable stones that can be removed one by one. The chains that bind you have been forged link by link over time. They will be broken the same way, not all at once, but link by link, day by day, choice by choice. Be patient with this process. The body remembers, the mind circles back to familiar paths. But with each conscious choice for freedom, New neural pathways are created, new possibilities emerge. I learned this patience through the practice of the Sema, our sacred turning dance. The novice dervish falls and becomes dizzy. His turns are imperfect. But with practice, the body learns a new way of being, and what was once impossible becomes natural, even effortless. There is a divine presence waiting in the space where your addiction has been. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the soul. As you release your grip on what has held you captive, be intentional about what will take its place. For me, it was poetry, prayer, music, and service to others. These became the new inhabitants of spaces once occupied by fear and compulsion. Find what makes your soul sing, what brings you even a moment of freedom and peace, and move toward that with the same dedication you once gave to your addiction. The false promise of addiction is that it will fill the emptiness within. The true promise of the spiritual path is that the emptiness itself becomes holy when we stop trying to fill it with substitutes for God. I discovered this truth during a night of prayer when I finally stopped trying to escape my loneliness and instead welcomed it as a sanctuary where the divine could meet me. The very emptiness I had feared became a sacred vessel, ready to be filled with something far more nourishing than any temporary pleasure or relief. The world will tell you that your addiction is your identity, that you are defined by what controls you. But I tell you this eternal truth. You are not your addiction. You are not your past. You are not your failures or your relapses. These are clouds passing across the sky of your true nature. Behind these clouds, the sun of your divine essence continues to shine, untouched and undimmed by whatever temporarily obscures it. I'm not speaking of some abstract theology, but of the practical reality that saved my life when I was consumed by my own forms of addiction. When I stopped identifying with the passing weather of my thoughts and compulsions, I discovered the unchanging awareness that witnesses it all without judgment. Here is a practice for remembering your true identity. When urges arise, when the voice of addiction speaks loudly in your mind, pause and say, I hear you, but I am not you. I feel this craving, but it is not who I am. Then, place your attention on your breath, the most basic affirmation of your life. With each breath, silently repeat, I am more than this moment. I am more than this urge. I am a beloved child of God. This practice creates space between yourself and the addiction, a crucial separation that allows for choice rather than compulsion. Freedom comes not from having no desires, but from no longer being enslaved by them. I still felt attraction, aversion, preference, and dislike after my awakening. But these states moved through me like weather, no longer defining me or controlling my actions. This is the liberation I wish for you, a life where you experience the full range of human feeling, but remain centered in something more constant and true. The final key to breaking the chains of addiction is connection. We become addicted in isolation. We heal in community. Find others who walk this same path, who understand without judgment, who can mirror back to you your true nature when you have forgotten it. In the presence of such companions, shame loses its power, and the voice of the addiction grows quieter. I found this truth in the circle of dervishes, where each of us held a piece of the other's liberation. Together, we remembered what alone we might forget. Remember this. Your struggle has given you a depth of compassion and understanding that those with easier paths may never know. Your wounds, once healed, become openings through which you can reach others still trapped in similar pain. Nothing is wasted in the economy of the soul, not even our darkest nights. I discovered that the very experiences I most wanted to forget or hide became the source of the wisdom I could offer to others. What seems like your greatest shame may become your most powerful gift. I see your exhaustion, the weight you carry as one who must provide for others while your own cup remains empty. The constant calculations in your mind about money that never seems enough, about time that slips through your fingers like water. I know the pressure that sits heavy on your shoulders each morning when you wake, the faces of those who depend on you flashing before your eyes before your feet even touch the floor. You wonder if there will ever be a day when you can breathe without this constriction in your chest, when the future will not loom like a shadow over every present moment. I too have known this burden of responsibility. In my years in Kenya, after my father passed, I became responsible not just for my own family, but for the entire community of seekers who gathered around me. They came hungry for spiritual nourishment, while I sometimes wondered if I had anything left to give. There were nights when I would pace the floor of my chamber, calculations and worries circling my mind like restless birds unable to find a place to land. The weight of others' expectations pressed down upon me until prayer itself became difficult. It was during one such night of anxiety that I walked out into the garden, the moon casting silver light upon the path. As I moved among the shadowed trees, feeling the cool earth beneath my feet, I began to notice something remarkable. Despite my worries, despite my sense of inadequacy, everything around me continued in perfect rhythm. The trees did not strain to grow, the birds did not worry about their songs, the stars did not exhaust themselves with shining. I stopped beside a small stream, listening to the water moving over stones, and suddenly understood a profound truth. I had been living against the natural current of divine provision. This is the spiritual paradox that will transform your daily struggle. The more desperately you try to control your life, the more it controls you. But when you align yourself with the underlying rhythm of God's provision, you discover an effortlessness that accomplishes more than all your striving. This truth contradicts everything the world has taught you about success and security. The world says, work harder, worry more, plan for every contingency, trust only what your hands can hold. But the divine wisdom whispers, live in alignment with the larger flow, trust the current that carries you, receive before you strive to achieve. I learned that my anxiety about provision was not actually protecting me from disaster, but preventing me from recognizing the abundance already flowing through my life. When I focused only on what might go wrong or what was lacking, I became blind to the countless ways in which I was already being sustained. The very air I breathed was a gift I had done nothing to earn. The ground that supported my steps was not there because of my efforts. The sun that warmed my face asked nothing in return for its generosity. Try this practice that transformed my relationship with daily provision. Each morning, before you look at your debts or count your resources, sit quietly for 3 minutes. Place one hand on your heart and the other hand open upon your lap. Breathe deeply and say these words. Today, I align myself with the flow of divine abundance. I open myself to receive before I strive to achieve. I trust the rhythm of provision that has sustained all life since the beginning of time. Then, throughout your day, notice every small evidence of this provision: a cup of clean water, a moment of beauty, the functioning of your body, a kind word from a stranger. What we appreciate, appreciates. This practice gradually shifted something essential in my approach to daily responsibility. Rather than seeing myself as alone in the struggle for survival, constantly pushing against an indifferent world, I began to recognize that I was participating in an intelligent system of giving and receiving that extended far beyond my individual efforts. My task was not to generate abundance through sheer force of will, but to position myself wisely within the current that was already flowing. This understanding changed how I approached even the most practical aspects of my life. I stopped trying to force outcomes and instead asked, how can I align this activity with the natural flow? How can I work with rather than against the current? What is the timing that would allow this effort to bear the most fruit? I noticed that when I forced things to happen according to my own timetable, I often exhausted myself for minimal results. But when I attuned myself to the right timing, the same actions seemed blessed with an ease and effectiveness that no amount of pushing could achieve. God is not absent from your financial struggles or your work concerns. The divine presence permeates every transaction, every task, every moment of planning for your family's future. But this presence operates according to laws more subtle and more powerful than mere cause and effect. There is a hidden order beneath what appears to be chaos in your life, a pattern too large for you to perceive when you are lost in the details of daily survival. I discovered this hidden order one spring when I observed the farmers planting their fields outside Kanya. Those who planted according to ancestral wisdom, paying attention to the subtle signs in nature rather than merely following a calendar, inevitably produced the most abundant harvests. They were not working less diligently, but they were working in harmony with forces larger than themselves. They understood that success comes not from imposing one's will upon nature, but from skillful participation in nature's own intelligence. You can apply this same wisdom to your daily work and responsibilities. Before beginning any important task, take a moment to become still and ask, is this the right moment for this effort? Am I pushing against a closed door, or am I moving through one that is already opening? Is there a way to accomplish this that requires less struggle because it aligns with the natural flow? This brief practice of discernment will save you enormous amounts of wasted energy and transform the quality of your work. The most practical form of faith is to do your part and then release your grip on outcomes. This is not irresponsibility, but the highest form of responsibility, recognizing that there are forces at work beyond your control and intelligence, greater than your understanding. I learned this lesson painfully when I insisted on directing every detail of our community's affairs, believing that nothing would function properly without my constant oversight. Exhaustion and resentment were the inevitable results, until I finally understood that my task was to create the conditions for abundance rather than trying to generate abundance through sheer determination. Try this exercise in practical surrender. At the end of each day, write down everything you accomplished and everything that remains undone. Place your hand upon the list of incomplete items and say, I have done what I could with the strength I was given. I now release these concerns into God's keeping until tomorrow. I trust that some work is being done even while I rest. Then, allow yourself to sleep without the weight of unfinished business haunting your dreams. Remember always, the universe does not require your anxiety to function properly. Your children do not need your exhaustion as proof of your love. Your worth is not measured by your productivity. I learned through many trials that my worry was not an offering, but a form of distrust, not of virtue, but a subtle form of pride that believed everything depended on me. True responsibility includes knowing when to work and when to rest, when to strive, and when to surrender. The path of inner renewal begins with this recognition. You are not the source of abundance, but a channel through which it flows. Keep the channel clear through prayer, through kindness, through moments of genuine presence with those you love. Align yourself daily with the current of divine provision through simple practices of gratitude and attention. Trust the process that has sustained life since the beginning of time. As I discovered in my own life, what flows through you can fulfill you, but only if you do not close yourself through fear or clutch too tightly through anxiety. The water that nourishes is the water that moves freely. I recognize the restlessness in your eyes, the searching that keeps you awake when others sleep. You move from one pursuit to another, trying on identities like garments, hoping that the next role, the next project, the next relationship will finally quell that persistent whisper that says there must be more than this. You have accomplished things that once would have satisfied you, yet the hunger remains. You have followed paths that others assured you would lead to fulfillment, yet you arrived at their end still questioning, still seeking. This is not failure. This is the soul's magnetic pull toward its true purpose. I know this restlessness intimately. Before I met Shams, I was a respected scholar and teacher, surrounded by hundreds of students who hung on my every word. By all outward measures, I had achieved the purpose set before me by my father and by society. Yet beneath the flowing robes and scholarly demeanor, a question burned. Is this all? Is this why I was created? The books I had memorized, the lectures I delivered with such confidence, they felt increasingly like hollow performances, echoes of others' wisdom, rather than the living truth I longed to embody. It was on an ordinary market day in Kanya that everything changed. I was returning from the madrasa, my arms filled with books, when a stranger approached me, a wild-eyed dervish with weathered skin and penetrating gaze. Without introduction, Shams asked me a question that shattered the foundations of my carefully constructed life. Who is greater, Muhammad or Bayezid? I replied as any Orthodox scholar would, affirming the Prophet's supremacy. Shams's eyes flashed as he responded, "Then how is it that Muhammad said, 'We have not known you as you deserve to be known,' while Bayezid proclaimed, 'Glory be to me, how great is my glory'?" In that moment, standing amid the bustle of the marketplace, a lightning bolt of recognition struck me. All my knowledge was second-hand. I had been living at the periphery of truth, speaking eloquently about waters I had never actually tasted. What Shams awakened in me was the understanding that my true purpose was not to be a repository of others' wisdom, but to become a living flame of direct experience. The books fell from my arms. My carefully constructed identity began to crumble, making space for something more authentic to emerge. Here is a spiritual truth that contradicts conventional understanding. Your purpose is not something you create or achieve. It is something you uncover and allow. The world tells you to set goals, make plans, force outcomes through sheer determination. But the soul's deepest calling reveals itself through surrender rather than striving, through listening rather than proclaiming. I discovered that my true work was not waiting in some distant future achievement, but in the quality of presence I brought to each moment. You see, God has placed a unique note within you, a specific tone that only your life can sound in the great symphony of existence. This divine purpose is not separate from your everyday activities. It infuses them, transforms them from mere tasks into expressions of your essential nature. When you align with this inner calling, even washing dishes becomes a form of worship. Even the most mundane conversation becomes an opportunity for truth to reveal itself through you. The divine presence does not speak to us only in grand visions or dramatic turning points. More often, it whispers through quiet intuitions, through persistent interests that won't let us go, through work that causes us to lose track of time because we are so naturally absorbed in it. I learned to recognize God's guidance in the activities that made me feel most alive, most connected to something larger than myself. For me, it was the writing of poetry, the practice of the Sema, our sacred turning dance, and deep conversations that ventured beneath the surface of things. Try this practice for uncovering your authentic purpose. For 7 consecutive days, set aside 10 minutes of silence. During this time, ask yourself, when do I lose track of time because I am so naturally engaged? What activities make me feel most like myself? What would I do even if no one paid me or praised me for it? Write your answers without censoring them. Look for patterns, for recurring themes. Within these patterns lies the thread of your unique contribution. This is not a plan you create, but a mystery you allow to reveal itself day by day. The greatest obstacle to discovering your purpose is not lack of talent or opportunity, but attachment to who you think you should be. I spent years trying to become what my father wanted, what my teachers expected, what society valued. The path to my authentic work began when I finally had the courage to let go of these imposed identities. This release is not irresponsibility, but the highest form of responsibility, the commitment to become fully yourself, to offer the gift that only your life can give. Remember that your purpose evolves through seasons, like a tree that produces different fruits in different times of the year. What fulfills you at 20 may not be what calls to you at 40 or 60. The essence remains the same, but its expression matures and deepens. I began as a scholar, became a poet, then a teacher of the heart's wisdom. Each role grew organically from the one before it, not replacing it, but encompassing and transforming it into something more authentic. The divine purpose never demands that you become someone other than yourself. Rather, it invites you to become more fully who you already are beneath the masks and roles you have adopted for survival or acceptance. I had to shed the identity of the authoritative scholar to discover the poet who had always lived within me, waiting for permission to speak. What parts of yourself have you silenced or neglected in your effort to be who you thought you should be? God's presence permeates every aspect of your search for purpose, not as a distant authority dictating your path, but as the very life force within you, seeking expression through your unique gifts and perspectives. Your deepest desires, not the superficial wants of the ego, but the soul's persistent longings, are breadcrumbs leading you home to your authentic work. I discovered that when I followed what brought me genuine joy rather than what I thought would bring me status or security, doors opened that I could not have imagined, support arrived from unexpected sources. The paradox of purpose is this: we find our unique contribution not by focusing on ourselves, but by asking how we can be of service. The question shifts from what will make me happy to what does the world need that I am uniquely designed to offer? I experienced this shift after the loss of Shams, when my personal grief transformed into poems that somehow spoke to the universal human experience of longing and separation. What began as a private expression of pain became a gift for countless souls across centuries. Your wounds, your challenges, your unique perspective, these are not obstacles to your purpose, but essential elements of the medicine only you can offer. Implement this practice of purposeful service. Each morning, ask yourself, how can my natural gifts be of benefit today? It might be through your work, through a conversation, through creating something beautiful, or simply through the quality of presence you bring to each interaction. Notice how this question shifts your focus from what you lack or need to what you have to give. This subtle reorientation aligns you with the flow of divine purpose. There is a natural order to discovering and living your purpose, a rhythm that unfolds when you learn to balance receptivity and action, listening and expressing, being and doing. I found that my most powerful writing emerged not when I strained to create something impressive, but when I became still enough to receive what was already seeking to express itself through me. The Masnavi, my longest work, came not from scholarly effort but from a state of receptive attention, as if I were taking dictation from a source beyond my individual mind. Trust the thread of fascination that pulls you forward, even when you cannot see where it leads or how it could possibly become your livelihood. The divine economy operates according to principles more mysterious and more trustworthy than mere logic. When you align with your authentic purpose, provision follows. Not always in the ways you expect, but with a rightness you will recognize in your bones. As I discovered during my own journey, when you honor the gift that seeks expression through you, the gift itself creates the conditions for its flowering. Remember this: your purpose is not a destination you reach once and for all, but a relationship you tend daily. It evolves as you evolve, reveals new dimensions as you become ready to embody them. Be patient with this unfolding. Trust the intelligence that is orchestrating your life with a wisdom beyond your current understanding. As the seed does not question its slow transformation into a tree, trust the organic process of becoming that is already underway within you. I leave you with this aphorism that emerged through my own search for purpose. The bird does not sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. Your purpose is not something you figure out with your mind, but something you recognize with your soul, not a problem to solve, but a mystery to live. When you align with this mystery, you become an instrument through which the divine music plays, unique and necessary in the great symphony of existence. You stand now at a crossroads, looking back at the path that has brought you here with all its unexpected turns, its moments of despair and glimpses of grace. The journey has not been what you expected. There have been losses that nearly broke you, challenges that stretched you beyond what you thought you could bear, periods of confusion when the way forward disappeared into fog. Yet, something within you has persisted, some spark of life that refused to be extinguished even in the darkest nights of your soul. This resilience is not your achievement, but a gift flowing through you, a testimony to the divine presence that has never abandoned you, even when you could not feel it. I, too, have walked through valleys so deep I thought I would never again see light. After the disappearance of Shams, I wandered for months between hope and despair, between rage and surrender. I searched for him in Damascus, in Tabriz, in every face I passed on the road. Each day without him was a small death, each night a wrestle with the angel of grief. There were moments when I questioned everything I had believed about God's love and providence. If the divine will could so suddenly remove the one person who had awakened me to truth, what certainty remained? What foundation could I build upon? It was during this period of profound disorientation that I discovered something unexpected. The very ground I thought had been pulled out from under me was revealing a deeper ground, a foundation that could not be shaken by circumstance. One evening, exhausted from searching, I sat beside a small fire under the vast desert sky. As I watched the flames dance against the darkness, I realized that Shams had never been separate from the source that had sent him to me. By losing him in form, I was being invited to find him in essence, to recognize that the awakening he had catalyzed could not be lost because it had become part of my own being. Here is a spiritual truth that contradicts conventional wisdom. The path is not a straight line of progress, but a spiral of continuous return and rediscovery. The world tells you that growth means leaving the past behind, constantly moving forward, never looking back. But the soul's journey moves in cycles, returning again and again to the same core wounds, the same fundamental questions, though each time from a higher perspective. I found that issues I thought I had resolved would resurface years later, inviting me to heal them at an even deeper level. This is not failure, but the mysterious way wisdom accrues in the human heart through layers of experience rather than linear advancement. The divine presence accompanies us in these spiraling returns, not as an impatient taskmaster wondering why we haven't yet mastered the lesson, but as a compassionate witness who understands that some truths must be embodied gradually through multiple encounters across a lifetime. I came to see that God was not disappointed in my slow growth or my repeated struggles, but was instead infinitely patient with the organic unfolding of my understanding. Like a master gardener who does not scold the rosebud for not blooming faster, the divine intelligence works with the natural timing of the soul's development. Try this practice of compassionate review. At the end of each week, sit quietly and reflect on patterns you notice in your reactions and choices. Where do you recognize old wounds still seeking healing? Where do you see genuine growth and transformation? Hold all of this with the same tenderness you would offer a child, learning to walk, falling, rising, falling again. Each attempt a necessary part of developing strength and balance. This practice of witness without judgment creates space for genuine change to occur, not through harsh self-criticism, but through loving awareness. The journey through life becomes sacred when we recognize that everything, every joy and sorrow, every triumph and defeat is being woven into a tapestry whose full pattern we cannot yet see. From our limited perspective, the threads of suffering may seem like flaws in the design, disruptions to what should have been a simpler, smoother pattern. But I have glimpsed in moments of clarity how these very difficulties create depth and dimension in the overall work, how they enable contrasts that would otherwise be impossible. What appears as chaos from our vantage point reveals itself, from a higher perspective, as a complex and beautiful order. I remember walking with my grandson through an ancient grove of olive trees outside Konya. The boy ran ahead, then stopped before a particularly gnarled and twisted tree, its trunk full of hollows and burls. "Look, grandfather," he called, "this tree is ugly." I smiled and led him closer, showing him how the very twists that seemed like deformities had created extraordinary strength in the wood, how the hollows had become homes for birds and insects, how the burls contained swirling patterns prized by woodworkers for their unique beauty. What appears as damage often creates capacity. What seems like deviation from the ideal path often creates resilience that a straighter course could never develop. God is present in your journey not as an author who has scripted every scene in advance, but as a master improviser who works with whatever materials are at hand, including your mistakes, your detours, even your resistance to create beauty and meaning beyond what you could have planned. I discovered this divine artistry at work in my own life when the very events I had most wanted to avoid, loss, disruption, radical change, became catalysts for the emergence of gifts I would otherwise never have developed. My poetry, the turning of the dervishes, the teachings that have endured for centuries, all were born not from my successes, but from what I initially perceived as devastating failures. Implement this practice of recognizing divine improvisation. Each evening, identify one unexpected turn. Your day took an interruption, a change of plans, a surprise encounter. Rather than seeing it as a disruption to your agenda, ask, what gift might be hidden in this unexpected development? What might be trying to emerge through this apparent detour? This simple shift in perspective attunes you to the mysterious way grace operates in your life, often through circumstances that initially seem random or even unwelcome. The final wisdom I have to share about the sacred journey is this: everything belongs. Nothing in your experience is wasted, nothing is irrelevant, nothing is outside the scope of your spiritual development. The achievements you are proud of, the failures that still bring you shame, the periods of clarity, and the seasons of confusion, all are being gathered up and integrated into the unique offering your life was designed to make. I spent years trying to edit my story, to highlight certain chapters while hiding others. But true liberation came when I embraced the whole of my experience, recognizing that even my darkest moments had served the emergence of whatever light I had to offer. If this message resonated in your soul, subscribe and be part of this awakening journey. Each week I bring wisdom for those who chose the path of true transformation. And leave in the comments, I embrace my sacred journey. This simple declaration marks the beginning of your journey back home, back to yourself. There is a profound order to life that often reveals itself only in retrospect. Looking back, you will recognize how experiences that seemed random were actually preparing you for what was to come, how relationships that ended painfully made space for new connections essential to your growth, how periods of disorientation preceded the most significant reorientations of your life. I have seen this pattern play out not only in my own journey, but in the lives of countless seekers who have shared their stories with me over the years. What appears as chaos in the moment often reveals itself, with time and perspective, as a higher form of order. As you continue on your path, remember that the greatest gift you can offer to those around you is your authentic presence, your willingness to show up as you truly are, with all your gifts and wounds, certainties, and questions. For too long, I hid behind the role of teacher, afraid to reveal my own ongoing struggles and doubts. True connection began when I had the courage to be as human with others as I was with God, to acknowledge that I too was still learning, still growing, still finding my way home. Your willingness to be real creates space for others to do the same, and in that shared authenticity, something sacred happens, a recognition of the divine presence that dwells in our common humanity. Try this practice of authentic connection. Once each day, share something true about your inner experience with another person, not a performance or a carefully edited version, but a simple, honest statement about what you're actually living. It might be a joy, a fear, a question, a hope. Notice how this small act of transparency affects the quality of your connection with others and with yourself. Truth is the doorway through which love enters our relationships. The discipline of the heart that sustains us on this sacred journey is not rigid control, but faithful attention, a willingness to keep showing up, to keep turning toward the light even when clouds obscure it, to keep choosing love even when fear makes its case. I discovered that spirituality is not about achieving a permanent state of enlightenment, but about developing the capacity to return, again and again, to an orientation of openness and trust. Some days this return happens easily, with grace and joy. Other days it requires every ounce of determination I possess. Both kinds of days are part of the path. I leave you with this aphorism that emerged through years of walking this sacred journey. The path appears beneath the feet that trust enough to take the next step. We do not see the entire route in advance. We are given just enough light for the stretch of road directly before us. But as we move forward with faith, more of the way is revealed, not all at once, but step by step, day by day, in the perfect timing of divine unfoldment. Remember always, you are not alone on this journey. The same presence that has guided every sincere seeker throughout history walks beside you even now, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, but always faithful. I felt this companionship most strongly, not in moments of ecstatic vision, but in the ordinary challenges of daily life, when I had to choose forgiveness over resentment, generosity over fear, presence over distraction. In these small decisions, the sacred journey is made, one humble step at a time, and in the end we discover that we have always been walking on holy ground.